Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Jak and Daxter Analysis, the series where I go through each area of Jak and Daxter and analyze each objective and explain what does and doesn't work. If this is the first of these that you're watching, you should start these from the start. I'll link the playlist below. Last time we talked about the Forbidden Jungle, a great level with some awesome objectives. One of them being a fishing minigame where you need to catch 200 pounds of fish for this lovable guy. If you succeed in doing so, he lets you use his speedboat to get to the far off Misty Island, which we'll be covering in this video, so let's dive right in. Misty Island is a place that Jak and Daxter came to in the opening of the game, where Daxter was turned from a human into an Ottsel, so it's pretty cool to finally explore this area. We even get to come back to the dark eco pool where Daxter fell in. The level is designed and structured fucking awesomely. This level is a really great time to highlight why it is that Jak and Daxter's level design is some of the best in any 3D platformer. I'd put it into my own words, but I think my mate Novacanoo put it best in his analysis.
There are always obstacles and enemies placed at regular intervals, keeping the player jumping and punching, always doing something beyond simply running to their goal. You could condense these possible routes into linear paths, and all the elements needed to make the platforming engaging would still be present and correct.
The previous two levels had some really simplistic objectives, and I gave them a pass because they were still in the early stages of the game. This level, I think, is at the point where the game really starts putting the player to the test. Something I completely forgot to mention in my last video on the Forbidden Jungle is that there are dark eco crates. The only thing they do is serve as a hazard placed throughout the levels they're in. They first appeared in the Forbidden Jungle, but I'm a dumbass and forgot. Contact with these will cause instant damage to Jak, so they should always be avoided. On top of the crates, this is also the first instance where we come across actual dark eco, here where Daxter got transformed. It won't have the same effect on Jak though. Falling into dark eco means instant death, but just look how cool it looks. This level also introduces a new type of eco, red eco. This one kinda sucks, honestly. What it does is it gives Jak a power boost, so he can hit harder. And that's the problem, this eco is really only useful in this level, cause this is the only level with red eco, and enemies that take more than one hit to kill, so it's kinda wasted. The enemies in Snowy Mountain don't count, but we'll get to them much later. It does increase your attack radius a bit, so that's cool, but not enough to make this at all useful. I just wish this was implemented better, not in just what it does, but how it's used. There are a few things that something like this could be useful for. A couple that come to mind are maybe being able to open the locked boxes by hitting them. That's a simple idea. Something that would have been really cool would be to treat it like the blue eco. There are a number of missions throughout the game, one on this level actually, that requires the player to power up with blue eco and move fast somewhere to activate something with it. Why can't we have something like, say, having a wall or door that's kinda brittle but won't break from normal attacks, so we'd have to find some red eco, bring it to the wall, and break it that way. Something like that is simple, but it would fit well and give the red eco some more context to be used in. It's just kinda frustrating because the game comes so close to doing this. Throughout Misty Island, there are these bones that Jak needs to punch to knock over to create a bridge from one platform to the next. Normally these take 3 hits to knock over with just normal attacks, but when powered up with red eco, it just takes 1 hit. See, they came so close to giving the red eco another context aside from combat, but they didn't take it far enough. What they could have done was make it so Jak can't knock them over with normal attacks at all, so you need to find some red eco, bring it to the bone, and then knock it over. If there were enough things like this sprinkled throughout the game, that would be awesome and really make red eco feel good to use. Anyway, this might be a good time to take a look at the enemies. We have the Babaks, again. Then we have the Bone Armor Lurker, or just the Bone Lurker. These guys are pretty cool. These are one of few enemies in the whole game that take more than 1 hit to kill. The first time you hit them, they'll spin back and their bone helmet will get stuck on their head. As they try to pull it off is when you hit them again to finish them off. If you don't hit them in time, they'll get the helmet off their head and you'll have to hit them twice again. This enemy is awesome. The way the game telegraphs the lurker taking damage is through this simple animation that the player will understand, as opposed to him flashing red or something like that. Little attention to detail like this is what I love about this game. The next one has a few names, but we'll just call him the Balloon Lurker. These guys are specific to one mission, which we'll talk about soon. Lastly, we have the Quicksand Lurker. These ones are pretty cool. There are only a few of them in the level and they live in the mud puddles. What they do is when you get close, they spit at you. I'm not really sure what they spit. In early builds, they used to spit what looked like fire, so I guess we'll go with that. Anyway, these fireballs travel in a fixed straight line and are incredibly slow, so they're fairly easy to dodge. If you get close to them, they'll retreat into the mud where you won't be able to get them, so you have to get up close and take them out fast before they disappear. And once you weed them out, the mud is lovely and secluded.
Only the most distinguished hippos know about this mud right here.
Right, now let's talk about the power cells. Catch the sculptor's muse. The sculptor in the village has lost his muse, so we can't sculpt anymore. He says that she's run away to Misty Island, somehow. So we venture over there to try and catch it and bring it back to him. Sounds simple enough, but it isn't. This mission is very similar to the Pelican mission from Sentinel Beach, a chase which tests the player's movement and their ability to traverse the level quickly. This one is considerably harder though. So as we arrive at Misty Island, we'll jump up these platforms and see these two lurkers walking around, and up ahead from them is the muse, just standing there. If we try to get too close, it runs away and we have to chase it. It runs in a loop around this portion of the level. We can't just run ahead and cut it off either, because it'll just turn around and go the other way. The only way to catch the thing is to have a really good grasp on Jak's movement and chase the thing. The average player will probably go through the whole loop without catching it, because there's a few lurkers along the way you have to take care of, and a bone you'll have to knock over. If the player just keeps at it, they'll eventually get close enough to catch the muse. This is a pretty great mission. It's another test of the player's movement and their ability to efficiently traverse these levels. Not much more to say, most of what could be said was already said about the Pelican mission. Climb the lurker ship. This one is really simple. You just have to find the ship, which isn't hard at all considering it's right next to the zoomer section of the level, and then you climb it. There's also a couple of lurkers that block the way, but they don't really pose much of a threat. This mission is also right next to the path that leads up to the next mission, so I think it would have been better to make a more challenging objective somewhere else in the level instead of rewarding the player for making 7 simple jumps in a row. Which leads me into the next objective: stop the cannon. This one starts right where the last one ends. It has the player making their way up a long path to reach the cannon. The only catch is that there are these logs that come towards Jak along the path. One type that just rolls towards you, which you can simply jump over, and the other type that bounces down the path. These ones are a bit trickier to avoid. You can walk or roll under the log, but you've got to time it right, otherwise you'll get hit. There are also a few platforms to the side of the path where the player can catch their breath if they need to. Some of these have a full cluster of green eco, so if you're struggling with the logs, you can fill back up with one of these clusters if you need to. Once the player has made their way up to the end of the path, they can jump down to this other platform. Walking up a bit, you'll encounter these two lurkers. Once you've killed them both, a power cell will pop out, and you can now use the cannon to blow up the locked boxes below. I think this mission was pretty good. The path up to the cannon was simple enough to understand, and difficult enough to be enjoyable. Good mission. Return to the dark eco pool. So in order to attempt this mission, the player will have to find one of these two doors and open it with blue eco. Once inside, a short cutscene will play showing a bunch of lurkers about to attack. This is one of a few times in the game where you'll find yourself facing a large number of enemies. And in each of these sections, the game will load the player up with a large amount of offensive eco. In this case, when some enemies are killed, they'll drop a cluster of red eco the player can use to their advantage. The enemies here only consist of the babaks and the bone armor lurkers, so the red eco comes in handy when dealing with the bone lurkers. If the player hasn't completed the Stop the Cannon mission, there will be explosives fired at you while doing this mission. Once all the lurkers have been dealt with, there will be a staircase that appears. Climb up that and there will be some precursor orbs, as well as the dark eco pool that Daxter fell into during the opening of the game. Next to that is a wooden walkway with a power cell at the center. I liked this mission a lot. While the game isn't very combat focused, the combat is fun and developed enough to warrant these kinds of missions to test the player's combat abilities. I also like the idea of having these few encounters where you can really go all out with using the offensive eco against a large group of enemies. It just feels and looks cool. So the next two missions require the player to use the zoomer, and since this is the first time that the player is given access to it, let's take a quick look over how it controls and fits into the game. This thing is basically a hover bike, so let's look at how it handles. It has a nice base speed and feel to it. The turning radius is pretty big though, so when trying to follow a path or something, you're gonna have to plan out your turns a bit. It doesn't take too long to get used to, thankfully. When you're needing to make sharp turns, there are two ways to go about it. First, you can let go of the accelerator and turn, then accelerate again when you need to, and then there's the hop turn, where if you jump and turn at the same time, your turning radius will pretty much go to 0. Both work fine, except the hop turn can be a bit finicky to get to work. And on that note, this thing can platform. Using the L1 or R1 buttons, you can make the zoomer do a small hop. The zoomer is used just as much for platforming as it is for racing or driving, and that's awesome. All in all, I like the zoomer a lot. It has a nice feel to it and it's a lot of fun to use. The fact that this core mechanic of the game was able to integrate itself with another of the game's core mechanics, platforming, is incredible, and I'm so glad they did this. Anyway, with that short explanation out of the way, let's look at the next mission. Destroy the balloon lurkers. So this is the first mission of the game where the player needs to use the zoomer. There are these lurkers that are flying around on balloons, and we have to kill them because they're dropping mines in the waters around the village. So the way to kill them is to just drive right into them. Seems simple enough for the zoomer's first mission, but they did make it a bit more challenging, thankfully. At the front and back of the lurker are 2 mines, and if we run into them, we take a hit and the lurker flies away. We have to line ourselves up with the lurker to ensure that we hit them. After flying just above the water for a bit, they'll fly up into the air where we can't get to them. Each of the lurkers do this in a cycle. There are 6 of them to kill. 2 of them just stay in this area on this side of the lurker ship, pretty much just following each other. These 2 do the same thing, just on the other side of the lurker ship, and these 2 just loop around the lurker ship, switching sides as they land. They're not too difficult to kill, you just need to take note of their patterns and wait for them to be in a good spot to kill them. Once you've killed all 6, a power cell will appear under the ship. I think this mission is pretty good. This is the first time the player will be controlling the zoomer, so the mission would need to give the player proper room to get accustomed to the controls, as well as present enough challenge to make it interesting, and I think they've struck the balance here quite well. The area is quite large, so the player can ride around and get a feel for the zoomer, and the lurkers themselves are simple to take out, but the player still needs to be precise about it to succeed. Good mission. Use the zoomer to reach the power cell. Yet another zoomer related mission. This one is a bit different though. This one focuses on the platforming aspect of the zoomer this time. So there is this power cell just floating in midair above the water, and the only way to reach it is to use the zoomer. So there is this wooden structure here mounted onto these rocks that we'll use as a ramp. First we'll drive up here, then follow through until we get to the jumping point. From here we'll want to try to get to full speed, then hit the jump button at the very end of the platform to get the power cell. While sure, it's a good preview of what's to come. There's a level later in the game that has a lot of platforming challenges like this, so it's a good taste tester mission. Use Blue Eco to reach the power cell. This one is pretty short, but effective. It's another one where you have to use Blue Eco fast and efficiently. So there's a power cell on this platform out in the water, and the only way to get to it is to activate this floating platform. And to activate that, we need Blue Eco. So there are 3 clusters in the nearby area, and we have to bring it to the platform before we run out of it. The first one is on this platform here. After knocking over this bone, we get to the platform with the second one. Drop down from there, and there's the third one, with the lurker and a dark eco crate. Now we have to get over to the platform. It can be a bit tricky. If we fall off of any of these platforms, we'll fall into the mist above the water and die. After making our way to the platform, we'll encounter a lurker right in front of it. After killing him and jumping on the platform, we'll get carried right over to the power cell. Yet another great mission that utilizes Blue Eco in the best way, forcing the player to move as fast as they can before running out of it. This is similar to the locked temple door mission from the Forbidden Jungle, but ramped up in difficulty. Good mission. And of course we have free 7 scout flies. So, Misty Island is a great level. The level design is incredible, one of the best design levels in the game in my opinion. So there are 5 checkpoints to the level, 1 at the entrance to the level, 2 at each of the doors at the arena area where we fought all the lurkers, 1 at this area here close to the lurker ship, and 1 at the zoomer. All of these are well placed, and I never felt cheated when I died and had to retread a lot of ground to get back to where I died. This is also the level to introduce both the zoomer and Red Eco. The zoomer is a great addition to the game and is introduced well here. Red Eco, on the other hand, is well introduced but poorly executed. Not just in this level, but its placement in the game as a whole. Now, to get to the cool stuff, let's look at the design of the level, and holy fuck, this place is amazing. If I was here in real life, I would be fucking terrified. It's such a spooky and secluded place. And just look at all these fucking skeletons. Imagine what these would have looked like before they died. They're absolutely massive. And the music is great. It adds to the spooky vibe so much. And there's also a couple spots where the music changes to this intense action music, and it's great. Not too much more to say. Misty Island is a great level, and is the last level of the first hub. So, now that we've become accustomed to the zoomer, we'll be able to use it to traverse the Fire Canyon in the next video. So, I'll see you guys then. If you liked the video, consider subscribing, it'd mean the world to me. Thanks so much for watching everyone, and take care.